Good morning. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on this 24th day of February 2025. Just to introduce the panelists, I just informed you who they are. Chairman of the Justice Legal Affairs Committee, George Murugara. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning.
It's been so long. How have you been?
I haven't been. I'm quite okay.
Right.
We are trying to keep up.
Yeah. Good stuff. Advocate Steve Ogola, Advocate of the High Court. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
I've also not seen you for some time now.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm okay.
All right. Good to see you. Karan Chris Kinyanjui is from the NCCK General Secretary. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
You've also been lost.
Yes, you haven't called us.
It's good to see you. And Robert Mboi, Member of Parliament for Kathiani Constituency and Deputy Minority Leader at the National Assembly. Good morning.
Morning, Sam.
Well, we were with you last week, so it's good to see you again. And this morning, the front page of the Daily Nation is retirees bear brunt of Ruto M-Pesa rule. Move was aimed at easing access to funds by the elderly. Many senior citizens have been locked out of the Inua Jamii program following President Ruto's directive that all disbursements be done through mobile money wallets. This stems from same registration hitches, including having national identity numbers with 7 digits or deemed too old, is the story that we find on pages 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. Defining week for Koome top judges, the Judicial Service Commission is set to reconvene tomorrow with a proposed ouster of the 7 Apex Court judges top of the agenda. And then you find inside elite Kenyan forces battle against Oromo militants and Raila's 4 options, and another story that is on parents losing streak in court cases against private schools orders. Then on the front page of the Standard, Turkana massacre. A violent militia attack at Tondo Nyang, Lake Turkana, has claimed at least 20 lives and left many injured. The assailants ambushed fishermen, sparking fears of escalating violence, with casualties still unaccounted for. Security forces are scrambling to contain tension along the volatile Kenya-Ethiopia border, and you have seen that statement from the PS at the Interior Department. Dr. Omolo indicating that they are waiting to verify the facts on the ground, but the situation there remains dire. Now, this morning, I want us to talk about the road to 2027, and we start by looking at what just happened last week on Thursday. The country lost the former chairperson of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, who had led that institution since 2017 January up until January 2023, serving a 6-year full term. And before he left, he had a few things to say, including on what needs to be done to ensure independence of the institution. He spoke about political interference in the commission, and he said that there needed to be a commission of inquiry on what exactly happened on August 15, 2022, during the declaration of the presidential elections. I begin with you, Chairman Murugara, on your thoughts and how you will remember Wafula Chebukati before you can get into some of the matters that he left the country with.
I think he was a firm leader. I'll remember him for some time being quite bold, because the first time I met him as a member of parliament was in 2017 again, after there was a misunderstanding, and he had to come in and explain to jail at that time what had happened. And both sides may not have been happy with him, but he stood firm.
Right.
And eventually we were able to wade through it. And this is exactly also what happened in 2022. There may have been shortcomings, but at the end of the day, he was able to make a pronouncement which actually carried the day. So to me, I'll remember him for having been quite firm and steadfast and focused on what he wanted to do without much swaying from any of the sides.
Right. Wakili Ogola, you worked closely with the commission. How will you remember Wafula Chebukati?
Thank you, Sam. Permit me to join the panelists in paying tribute to the departed former chairman of IBC, the Honorable Wafula Wanyonyi Chebukati. A patriot extraordinaire, a man who served this country with courage and conviction, clarity and consistency. A firm and resolute man, yet humble and polite to the core. May God grant him eternal rest, and may Kenyans remember him with love and fondness, and in particular for his leadership and contribution to deepening democracy in this country and political stability. The decisions that the Commission made during the tenure of Honorable Wafula Chebukati partly contributed to the progress this country has made some. I have known Chebukati and I've worked closely with him for the entire period he worked as chair. He was a very, very deeply consultative man. Right. He imagined that leadership is co-shared, and he went out of his way most of the time to get views from professionals, religious leaders, the medias. Remember IBC, Chebukati's IBC was very strong on consultative forum. I remember stakeholders meetings with the civil society, stakeholders meetings with the media, stakeholders meeting with the lawyers, stakeholders meeting with the religious sectors and the political leaders, and the election operation framework that was always prepared more than 2.5 years to the election, detailing the roadmap that Kenya needed to walk in the lead up to the election, was always shared in advance, and it was always subject to public participation. He did his best. And I cannot finish without saying this, those who question Chebukati's leadership in the lead up to the 2022 presidential election must remember the following.
Right.
That whereas it's okay to question, and that is what we must do, when the question of validity of the 2022 general election was subjected to the court under Article 140 of the Constitution, the court upheld the credibility of that election. The net effect, Sam, is that the commission, and in particular chair, got validation from the judiciary, and you cannot take it away, Sam. We may not be happy one way or another, but the fact is this: when the highest organ tasked with reviewing the conduct of an election returns a verdict of approval, that question must now rest. We can debate what kind of reforms, and I'm happy to see our leaders here to tell us, because they make the laws and they approve those policy decisions made by the executive and the independent decisions of organs. I want our leaders to tell us what is it that we can do going forward to make the 2027 election even better managed. But we cannot, Sam, in all honesty, begrudge the commission for work done and validated by the Supreme Court.
All right.
I think that's how I see it.
All right. And you talk a bit about some of the key events and developments that during the tenure of Wafula Chebukati we saw in the country. Mheshimiwa Mbui, your thoughts about Wafula Chebukati and his passing?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. First, let me pass my condolence to the family and friends of the late chair of IBC. You know, in our culture, we are not supposed to speak ill of the dead. But the reality is that we have a lot of questions about the way he handled the last elections, particularly the delivery of the results, the verdict at the end. I mean, there were obvious flaws that we saw. For example, the language that he used. I think it's important that whoever takes up that office is clear in their minds that at that point, it's a very emotive period, but you must be careful what you say when you're announcing results, because it has the potential of really, hurting some part of the community of Kenya. And the other thing was also the way he managed the commission in such a way that at the end of it, the commission was already split into two. There was a team of 4 that went to issue contradictory results in Serena. And then he was left with another team that was now issuing the official results as the actual returning officer. So at the end of it all, I think we must look at how is it that what kind of person will we have in that office, and what kind of mannerism and management of that commission will we have going forward, so that we don't end up with the same situation. So I mourn his demise, and of course I would want that his soul rest in eternal peace.
All right, Canon Chris, you also worked closely with him, or rather your institution and your colleagues. Your thoughts?
Yes, on behalf of the National Council of Churches of Kenya, I would like to give our condolences to the family at this time when they are mourning the death of Chebukati, the former chairman of IEBC. We worked with him closely, not just in 2022, but also in 2017. Mm-hmm. It's not, when you have a 6-year term, it's not common to do 2 elections, but at least for the 3 of them, together with the other 2 commissioners, Commissioner Gulie and Molu, they were able to do that. And we can see their consistency, the hard work that was put to make sure that these elections happened. And we really appreciate the work done, not just by the chair, but also by the entire commission. Mm-hmm. The second thing is to say that the election in this country is more or less like a storm. And we saw Chebukati going through 2 storms or 2 elections quite successfully in our view. And as we look forward to the next election, is just to say that those who are seeking this kind of opposition, mm-hmm. They need to have nerves of steel. They need to be able to withstand the storms and the pressure, because our political colleagues are still going to put in a bit of interference. There'll be demands from other stakeholders, and we need a steely person that can be able to give the country confidence like Chebukati did.
Right, and during his tenure, you will recall that in 2017, as soon as they came to the office, and I think Steve, you're also very involved there, they came to the office January 2017, but before the election of August, there were so many court cases, including at some point, we were not even clear if we were going to have presidential ballot papers. I think the decision was made somewhere close to July. What that must have meant for a commission, but also lessons that we may want to pick moving forward to avoid such kind of a situation, because 7 months to an election with all that very litigious process from stakeholders?
Yeah, imagine Sam, I think this commission, Chebukati's commission, joined IBC in January 2017, a product by Kiraitu and Orengo Joint Committee in 2016. Mm. And just like now, we were saying, Kenyans were saying that, look, we need sufficient time to reconstitute the commission. And you can see the challenges of reconstituting the commission too close to the election. Because remember in 2017, there were a lot of court cases that went all the way to the Court of Appeal around printing of ballot papers, procurement of EVs. I think that is the time we're using this electronic voter identification devices, mm-hmm. The question of the transmission of electronic results. And remember when the Supreme Court nullified the outcome of the presidential election on 1st September 2017, rather, yeah. The striking comment from Maraga's court was that there was no coherent explanation on deployment of technology. In lack of deployment of technology in the transmission of results in some key constituencies or key polling stations. And you can understand when the commission is procuring election material just under 8 months to the election. Mm. So I think as we reflect on the management of election in 2017, yep. as against 2022, you can see a clear departure within the commission's psyche. Mm. After the 2017 election, in the lead up to 2022 election, there was a lot of preparation. And they kept on saying, I personally participated in the review of the election operations plan, which was finalized 2.5 years clear to the election. Mm. And the management of 2022 election was remarkably better than 2017 because they had sufficient time. Now that we are here, I think I always like to appeal to all the key stakeholders in election management. We tend to focus on the commission, but we don't remember that the commission implements a framework that is the product of public participation. The commission itself is brought through a process led by the selection panel. Mm. So if the selection panel delays in constituting the commission, Parliament delays in passing regulations and the laws. Remember, in 2017, 2016, 2017, there was litigation around election campaign financing.
Yeah.
IBC published campaign expenditure guidelines to be operationalized in 2017 election. Parliament, Mheshimiwa's Parliament, you convened on 2nd December 2016 and suspended those regulations. But nobody wants to talk about that. In the lead up to the 2017 election, IBC decried lack of financial resources to roll out basic things. Even the printing of ballot papers in 2017 and in 2022 partly, the release of resources, the exchequer was just taking their time. So I think when we audit the conduct of elections 2017, 2022, we have to pay close attention. And I'm very happy to see Waheshimiwas on this part, because I want to see them taking responsibility for part of the Commission's failures, if at all. The Commission's failures is a networked failure. It touches on Parliament, it touches on Treasury, it touches on the civil society, it touches on political leaders generally. Because you implement a framework that needs to go through so many sectors. And yet, they produced a result that was largely consistent with the Constitution. And remember when the Supreme Court nullified the election, Sam, I think, look at what the Constitution says. The fresh election need to be conducted in 60 days. What happened? We had the irreducible minimum demands. And the primary player in that election boycotted that election. I mean, Sam, look, you have gone to court. The court has agreed with you that the deployment of technology in the 2017 election was not to the required standard. Here, the Commission has been asked to do a second take within 60 days, and then you walk out.
Right.
And then you go back to the Commission and blame the Commission for not conducting an election consistent with the Constitution. So I want you, Sam, and all practitioners, to put spotlight, to shine the spotlight more on key stakeholders that feed into IBC's work.
Right.
Because if you keep on neglecting that component, you will be targeting the wrong man.
And you're right. I think it was on the... Was it in September when Raila Odinga withdrew from the election, or was it in October?
It was in October.
It was in October.
October 10th or thereabout.
Yes.
And I remember even candidate Uhuru Kenyatta going at him and telling him, even if you don't want to participate in the election, Kenyans want to. And indeed, we ended up having an election that perhaps half of the country did not take part in. Mheshimiwa Mbui, where do you place the role of political leaders in the fairness of an election? Because many would have expected that the repeat election in 2017 would actually be nullified for the lack of participation in parts of the country, but that was not the case.
Now, you know, Sam, one of the things you must wonder is that if there was questions about how the elections were conducted in 2017, as at that time we were in NASA, how was it going to be fair again within a very short period that the same team that was managing the elections under the same conditions was expected to provide different results? I mean, that was at the end of the day the reason why it was untenable for NASA to continue participating.
You said what was the reason?
The same team, the same players, the same conditions were still in existence. So it was going to be very difficult to expect different results going into that election. So I think at the end of the day, the decision was taken that we don't participate because participating would have given us exactly the similar results. So that's why we pulled out. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to, this issue of IEBC and the issue of elections, it's something we need to in my opinion, I think it falls squarely on the team that is given the management of that commission, because you cannot blame the political leaders. Excuse me. Political leaders are just participants. They are candidates. They don't run the election. They only provide themselves to seek political office. So the people who manage elections are the ones that matter. So on that score, I want to differ with Wakili here, because I think at the end of the day, that because we have an opportunity now to form an IEBC for the next election. Let us get credible citizens, credible people. And then at the end of the day, let us also be very careful that we don't have political interference. You saw that just recently there was an attempt to, to have people that were leaning on the side of Kenya Kwanza going to represent Azimio in the selection panel. I mean, we ended up in court, we won that case, and now we have our candidate. So at the end of the day, I think it's important that we have a situation where political players, keep away from interference with the formation of IBC. If we have a situation where the people that are running IBC are clearly skewed to one side of the political divide, clearly at the end of the day, the credibility of that election will be questioned. And that's why we always end up in the streets after elections. So this is an opportunity for Kenya to have the right IBC in place.
All right, I'll get back to you because there are some few things you've said there that we need to interrogate further. But Chairman, you don't agree with...
I don't agree with Honorable Mbui. Number one is there's no way we would have tried to nominate members into the selection panel who are not their members, because the law is very clear who is supposed to nominate who out of the 9 that are supposed to sit in the selection panel. So I don't agree with him that there was anybody trying to do so. Number two is he says we must get credible Kenyans. That role is given to the selection panel, which again is constituted by everybody, such that whoever goes in there, we are likely to say this is by consensus. This is the person we have agreed on, and he is likely to do a good job. While I mourn Chebukati, because I still believe he did his best, and in fact he should be remembered for having conducted 2 elections and kept the country together. What we need to know also is to pay attention to timelines. There is no way we can fault Chebukati for having said we will do a repeat election in 60 days. Our constitution says so. So he had no role. Nobody could twist him. He could not change anything, and we just have to live with it. We cannot complain here that the election petition must be determined in 14 days, because that is, again, what the law says. Sorry, the judges of the Supreme Court must do whatever it takes to give us results in 14 days. So we have all these timelines. The only thing I would want to emphasize, number one, is that we still have almost 2 years to constitute an IBC, give them a crash program where they are able to put into place a credible mechanism of delivering to us a credible, verifiable, and believable election. Right. Because that is what is in Kenyans, that we don't think that my vote will be 1 vote. It may be 2 votes, it may be half a vote. We want an IBC that is going to give us 1 vote for 1 vote, so that everybody believes in what was done. The last one for Chebukati, I give it to him. Sincerely, when we went to the Supreme Court, there was only 1 issue to be determined. And I keep on saying, the rest of it was all drama. Yep. 1 issue. Show us in a manner that is credible that the relevant forms, 34, any of them was altered. You show us that, we will give you the judgment you want. They could not produce even 1 that was altered. So to him, I say the election was credible. There may be there are shortcomings here and there. It's believable. I mean, you're dealing with 50 million people. There is likely to be a problem here, another one there. But what we want is, on a balance of probability, the election must be credible.
Election must be credible. Canon Kinyenjui, so during his time also, we witnessed a lot of boardroom wars. Under his watch, 7 commissioners resigned. The first one was Roslyn Akombe. Then the other 3 commissioners, Conin Kada, Paul Kurgat, and then Margaret Mochanya in April 2018. Then after the 2022 election, there was a tribunal formed to interrogate the conduct of 4 commissioners. 3 of them decided to resign very early December. The other one was removed by the tribunal. What does this say about leadership, that you'll find 3 of them coming out and saying that he is pursuing his own individual glory and continuing service in the commission is no longer tenable? What does that say?
Well, Sam, I think all of us watched because at the time that Chebukati and their team was appointed, they came, of course, and had to organize an election quickly. They found a few other commissioners on board, and work continued. But at some point, we saw a lot of corporate governance within the IEBC. Our own interrogation about that, because we had access to most of the commissioners that were on board, is that they had also personal differences that came to fore. Of course, they were also under a lot of pressure, and I think that pressure got to bear into how they worked. Then we saw the resignation of some of the commissioners, as you have mentioned, like Machai, Koni, and others. And at that time, the issue was whether we had a commission after they had left. And there was even a court decision, if I'm right, to say that as long as there are 3 commissioners, that there is a commission. So what we have seen in IEBC is that we must look at questions of corporate governance. How does the commission remain together? How does the commission work together? They may not love each other. They may not agree on all issues. Right. In fact, they are not supposed to agree. But at the end of the day, they must have collective responsibility to deliver an election. Then the other thing is towards 2022, because now we saw the coming in of the other part of the commission to replace those, yes, Cherera 4. What I think is that the two sides were like water and oil. They kind of never gelled, and they didn't work together. Remember, the other team had already done a lot of the work that is supposed to be done to prepare for elections, the election plans, the election procurement, and more of leadership, and they kind of had gelled together. So the new team that came on board came almost like icing on the cake, and they never gelled together. And even when we had conversation with them, that's the feeling that we got, and we tried as much as we could to bring them together. Unfortunately, they fell apart, which was a very great disaster on a very critical day. And this is why we have to always come back and say that anyone who works at the commission must be given thorough training. I don't think that the commissioners, especially those that exited, understood the weight and the sacredness of the duty that they were doing. And we felt like there was a bit of, they didn't lift the weight that they were supposed to lift, and they put the country in a very difficult place. My final point is the decision of the results that are announced. Is it the decision of the chair, or is it the decision of the whole commission? I think that has been debated quite a bit. It's our view as the church that the commission must come to the country and to the world to declare the presidential candidate who wins together. There should be a show of unity. There should be consensus on what they do. Of course, that consensus doesn't include breaking the law, for example, or doing things that are outward, as we had during the last election. But they must stick together, because if they don't, then they put the country in grave danger.
All right, and we're taking a short break here. When I come back, we'll wind up on that Chebukati's legacy, looking at the major developments during his tenure, how Kenyans will remember his service to the nation. Stay tuned. What are your views? You can text us at Citizen TV Kenya. That is a post on X at Citizen TV Kenya. Sam Gichuku. The hashtag to use is Citizen Daybreak. We'll be sampling some of your feedback after the break. Stay tuned.
hiyo chuki umelea nayo God ndio umefanya amekuwa rebellion.
Wewe unajua mtoto wako kweli?
Si takataka ni yeye ameweka si mtu mwingine.
Hivi jana hizi siku hizi sumbua sana hizi watu bana.
Alafu kwanza hiyo deal cheki ikiwa zaidi ya mtumbo wako sasa itakuwa tafash.
Nitarudi kwa pole nikupatia kioo.
Afande belt yangu iko hapa.
Wewe uweka vitu zako vizuri.
No, you know we can't work like this.
Niaje? Umetakiwa mshikio kumpeleka kuoga.
Mambuzu ametoweka ukiwa umesimama hapo. Na bila uko mrefu. Nani? Niweke undani.
Hata kunishika kama mtoto.
Nioda hapo bwana. Wacha kunioda hapo.
Safaricom is turning 25 years. To celebrate this milestone, Safaricom is offering data double. Simply dial *544# or through My Safaricom app to grab your double offer now.
Hizo ni simu ziko hapo. Udashughulika na kazi yako, sawa?
What have you done to my books?
Sijui mbona mnajisumbua kusoma hivi na nguvu nyingi.
Ile pepo umechukua kutoka kwa Sophie.
Iko na?
Hiyo ni leakage.
We need to get to the bottom of this.
Terrain.
By the time I'm done with them, they will be as disciplined as a clock.
Ndio hiyo.
I love you, my darling. From your secret admirer.
Unajiona mkiwa wajanja sana, si ndio?
Punishing them will not work.
How are we going to help them if they don't share with us their issues?
Hey, what are you doing there?
Ile siku ambayo nitaoa. Will I enjoy my life? Will I have my fun? And I'm just imagining like if tuko na mtu ambaye Mumias kule ama in Kakamega ama in Western Kenya ambaye ati yeye ndiye anaamua chagueni huyu. Msichague huyu. Somebody like me could not have been elected.
Watch this story and more. Download the Citizen Digital app or visit www.citizendigital.com and find the Citizen Originals portal.
Kenya's #1 app, Citizen Digital.
Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 24th day of February 2025. We were talking about the legacy of Wafula Chebukati. Of course, it's a very short time to really comprehensively cover it, but just touching on some of the main highlights. Mheshimiwa, you had mentioned that a part of your irreducible minimums in 2017 was that you wanted a different team to oversee the election. How would you do that?
Well, you know, Sam, the reality is that we felt that the team had mismanaged that election, and that is the reason why NASA went to court, and a court decision was given. But if you notice the irreducible minimum that was given by our leaders, one of them was that this team is not capable of managing the election. Obviously, then legally, then the election could not have been held. I think at the end of the day, that would have been the issue. But some allow me to just say, because we are at that moment.
Was it a fair ask?
It's a complicated ask, but you see, I said elections are very emotive. And at that time, we felt that the team in office was bungled the election. So that would have, you know, I mean, look at it from forget the legal process, but look at it from a perspective of a candidate, and you feel that the team that is managing the election is managing it, you know, against probably the wishes of the public, and in favor of your opponent. That would obviously be one of the logical things that you'd consider. Unfortunately, like we all know, it wouldn't have worked legally because there was no way we would have put another team in place in 60 days. And that's why we boycotted. And look at it this way, after we boycotted, life went on. And, you know, towards, after a period...
That's what I'm asking. You clearly appear, you knew it wasn't going to work. Your reducible minimums are not going to work, because when you ask the firing of a CEO, the non-participation of some of the commissioners, senior staff were not supposed to, some senior staff were not supposed to take part in that election. And actually, Wafula Chebukati made sure that Ezra Chiloba did not take part in the active conduct of the election. Why would you put such kind of demands?
You know, I think, Sam, you're asking the wrong person, because even at that time, my pay scale was not to make certain decisions. I had already been elected myself as a member of parliament by that same commission. you know, through that same commission and through the process. The people that were aggrieved was my party leader as a running mate and Raila Amolo Odinga as a candidate. And the reducible minimum came from them. So I think that's a question that would
From Kalonzo Musyoka?
Sorry?
From Raila and Kalonzo.
It came from Raila and Kalonzo. So I would say that those are the people that you'd actually fairly ask that question, because I looked at it from and I've just told you looking at it from their perspective. If you feel that the people managing the election are doing it against you, then clearly you'd feel that they're compelled to ask that we have other people do it. But like we said, it wasn't going to be possible anyway. Because, I mean, to put in a new IBC and have them trained and all, it wasn't going to work within the 60 days. That's the reason why we boycotted. So because at the end of it all, even if we went back to that election, we probably have gone through the same, situation, probably gotten the same kind of result. So that's the reason.
And what is your assessment of the repeat election itself?
Well, we didn't participate.
We didn't
participate.
Yes, but as a member of parliament,
yes,
going through the process of the Supreme Court, but also what you've been able to see after that fact, what do you make of it?
I think we need to think further beyond what maybe figure out what exactly can be done. Because look at it this way: I think the Supreme Court did their bit, and they gave the timelines within which they're allowed to do that. But if the team that is managing the election is, in the opinion of one of the political divides, is biased, then it becomes very difficult, because at the end of the day, the real issue here is an issue of trust. And that's why even some, as we are going through the process now of identifying, a new commission, you realize, Chairman of JLAC is here, that NADCO did come up with certain proposals on how this thing will be done. And one of the proposals is that the position of chair will be agreed upon by the two principals, the one for Azimio and the principal that is for Kenya Kwanza. And that is now the President and the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. Now, assuming, and this is why I'm saying these things of elections are very emotive, assuming, for all intents and purposes, if Raila and Ruto were to join hands and agree that they are going into the next election as a team, just assuming that happens, then what happens to the NADCO report, which says that the two principals must agree on the chair? Now, if they're on the same side, then who now, who sits in for the principal on the other side?
Okay.
So these things, unfortunately, keep unraveling, and there's always complications. Because if that was the situation, then what would happen is that by the time we are going to the next election, all the other players would already be crying foul. And that, I think, it's an issue of trust. So that's, I'm saying, I think we need to find someone that can be credible, acceptable by all Kenyans, so that everybody can be confident that this person will handle this election fairly, so that the country can stay stable.
All right. That request is quite interesting. We'll debate it shortly. Canon, help me here, because towards that election, October 18th, Wafula Chebukati came out and called out the candidates themselves, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta especially, on what had been going on, the attacks against the commission. How do we shield democratic processes from political interference?
Well, if you remember the history of IBC and why we even put the I, is to make it independent from political interference. But I think we got it semantically, not in reality. What happens is that everybody who is a candidate has an interest in the election. And therefore, when they see something going wrong, they have a right to call out the commission, they have a right to go to court and get an order, and so on and so forth. And even the public, they can be able to have an outcry. So what I would say is that when presidential candidates especially, because they are the ones who are warned of that kind of behavior, attack the IBC consistently, especially in the language that we saw in 2017, and a bit of it also in 2022. There's a way it affects the morale of the staff, the morale of the commission, and generally how elections are done. But that is not to say that when candidates have issues, they shouldn't raise them. So there should be a process, and that is why there is a political parties liaison committee and several other organs that are able to deal with those matters. The second issue is that whenever an IBC is chosen, and that is what Mheshimiwa is talking about, it's important to have political consensus on the trust levels on the commission. And that's something that was discussed in NADCO quite a bit, and I'm happy that the chair is here. What is the weight of the chair? What kind of trust does the chair bring on the table, even before you think about IBC? Because a commission cannot be independent if the commissioners themselves are not independent. Right. And what that means is their character. Are they known to stand for something? Are they known, because the commission won't make them independent. They must be able to make independent decisions, because politicians from both sides or different sides are still going to push them to make decisions that favor them. This is a game, this is a sport, and therefore the rules must remain the same, and the commission must be like Caesar's wife, above reproach, and not one that can be moved by one side or the other. So we still have a piece of work to do in getting that kind of a heavyweight in the commission moving forward. But again, it is not that we are going to see the last day of interference. Interference will come, but I think the question is, how will the commission, especially the chair, deal with that interference, and how can we be able to safeguard the commission legally to maintain its integrity, its trust with the public, but also trust with the political class, who are the main players in the elections.
Chairman Murugara, so before Wafula Chebukati left office, I think it was on 16th of January 2023, he held an event where they were unveiling the post-election evaluation report. Yeah. And one of his asks were that they had written to the president to form a commission of inquiry to establish what exactly happened to the bombers of Kenya on the 15th of August. Well, he has died without such a team being constituted, no full accountability for what happened then. Is this still a priority for the president?
The dead tell no tales. The problem is possibly that was his request. It was not acceded to. It has not been acceded to. And I don't know whether it is spent or not spent. I think it will have to be taken back to the table so that it can be relooked at. Some people, most of them may say, let bygones be bygones. Those are events that took place that time, and they may not be relevant to what we are doing now. So we must draw our parameters from exactly what was happening at Bomas that time so that it is not repeated. What I have in mind is that it's a difficult task. And especially when we say the chairperson must be independent, he must be able to make independent decisions. And that's the sort of person we expect from the panel when that is announced towards maybe end of March, beginning of April. My worry is how the panelists will be able to determine such a person, because somebody may appear extremely independent, is extremely good, but when he gets in, he starts taking directions from other quarters, taking sides and other whatever. That is
You're never able to see this.
You may not be able to see it at the point of, because it has happened before. We actually didn't have a lot of faith in Chebukati when he was named. An advocate, I think he was practicing in Mombasa, little was known of him, etc. But when he came in, soft-spoken, but eventually became quite firm. And we actually think, I mean, on all quarters, he did his best. So I think we have to wait and see. The president is going to get 3 names from which to select the chairperson. There must be some consensus, as Honorable Mbui says, from the other principle, according to NADCO report, which we are trying to implement now.
Is it in the Act?
It is not in the Act. It is purely, he's going to get 3 names.
So why would you implement something that is not in the Act?
Possibly because of consensus. You know, NADCO is a non-binding, it's a non-legal agreement which may be binding on the parties depending on circumstances and the political situation of the day.
That's what I'm asking. Okay, we're already getting into the next
So we are not going to get into, have you consulted to name the chairperson, or what
I'm asking is, once the selection panel gives 3 names to the president,
yes,
why would he go ahead to consult with the Azimio leader?
That may be out of his goodwill. Absolutely. Out of goodwill, out of his own volition. He's not required to do so by the law. But remember, they have that gentleman's agreement, the NADCO agreement, which he may want to look at and which he may want to consult from time to time for purposes of his own doing things. I'm not saying he's going to do it, but that's the provision that was made in there. And if he does it, you will say, sorry, what loss or damage will I suffer for doing it?
Okay, so the president said, Wakili, this is for you. The president said that if Chebukati were to tell you the kind of hell he went through, the day the story of August 15 will be told in Kenya, you will know why I am delaying. Because I have to balance between, do I sort out the economy, we are almost in the red, or do I swing this big thing that you drain our energies? That was the president on January 4th, 2023. 12 days later, Wafula Chebukati said the commission wrote to the president requesting for a public inquiry in respect to the process leading to the declaration of the final results for the presidential election 2022. A day later, President Ruto said they wanted to abduct Wafula Chebukati and murder him so that the commission would be paralyzed or a compliant commissioner to take over and subvert the people's sovereignty. All these issues remain as claims. Nothing has been done to establish the truth or the facts.
Well, I think,
is it necessary?
Let me answer your question, then I hope I'll get to make a comment on the kind of political consensus which is unconstitutional ab initio, must not even be contemplated, let alone be implemented. But let me start with this.
Yeah.
I think Chair has rested well. He spoke his mind in the affidavit. Sam, please pull it up. I think if you give me more time, I can get you his affidavit in the presidential election petition. I was there for IBC. When he was signing that affidavit, I was there.
Yeah.
He named people who are trying to manipulate him to alter the results. When they failed to convince him to alter the results, they persuaded him to then at least defer the announcement to allow for consensus, the kind of dangerous consensus. Now, the two Mheshimiwas are now trying to revalidate. He says in his affidavit, so there can't be a tell-it-all textbook or book that will expand the conversation beyond what the chair already said in his affidavit. Remember when he was preparing the responses, the petition, he was first confronted with what looked like a moral, legal, and ethical question. Do I summon courage to set it as it is, or do I suppress certain facts? And I told him, Chair, look, you only have one bite at the cherry, one. If you don't say who was interfering with the election, you will forever remain silent. Please speak now and through your affidavit, so that the court can take your response into consideration when determining the outcome of this, the validity of this election. So he made an appeal, partly because Kenyans don't read judgments, and judgments are written in ordinary language. Look, the reason why we have Kenya law is for Kenyans to log in, read those judgments, which are written in pretty simple, straightforward language. But you leave it to lawyers, which means there's already an information blackout. If you read the affidavit, which is in plain language, I wish some of these days you could just remove the word replying affidavit and then replace it with statement so that Kenyans can read. Because introduce complex words like affidavit, then you think it's for lawyers. You can only expand the conversation on why that interference, not whether there was interference. The question whether there was political pressure on the chair is already settled in court in his affidavit. I think he was a courageous man to do so. Whether that commission of inquiry is established or not to interrogate the circumstances leading up to that interference, it's a question then we defer the political elite. But I can speculate that our political leaders have some curious sense of entitlement, some. The kind of entitlement that you and I don't have. Because Mheshimiwa Mbui here has a whole constituency behind him that gives him some, and unfortunately at some point, some exaggerated sense of entitlement to say things that I cannot say because of no constituency behind me. If he loses the election, the same man, he would lose that authority to speak with the kind of arrogance, not him, that they speak, yeah? Now, that political interference and that arrogance is what sometimes filters into IBC, and then compromises election management. Chair has just commented, Chair, I disagree very fiercely. The Constitution has ordained a neutral expert approach to the Commission.
Right.
Article 88 disbars very expressly anybody with strong political affiliation. Remember, one of the commissioners, I think Irene Masit, was removed from the office through judicial action because she ran for office for nomination. I don't know how the selection panel overlooked that. But when that question was posed to the courts, the High Court said that is untenable. We need a neutral expert commission. But I understand the commission, the Constitution, Sam, is not static. If Kenyans say...
Do you think it was possible for Parliament to catch it? That she had participated in an election?
Because she was out in nomination. She claimed that she did go to the ballot, but she declared interest and she was subjected herself to nomination, yeah? Look, here's where I draw the line. This one I can defer to the political leadership, yeah? If you want to open a debate that is already settled, it's okay, because Kenya we're always debating, building consensus and renovating the law. The explanatory document in Article 88 is in the Guy report, the Kriegler report, and the Zamba Kitonga Committee of Experts report. The consensus in all those three reports says, look, we have the option of having a mixed model commission where you have neutral experts and political experts. You heard Baba saying they have sent experts to government. And Kenyans were mocking that. It's very serious. Those are political experts. Their presence in government, expert Opio and I, expert John Badi, expert Oparanya, expert Joho, they bring political clout in government and they give it the kind of legitimacy government needs to govern. So those are experts. Those are political experts, and then you have professional experts. If you decide as a country that the debate that lasted more than 20 years means nothing in our context, it's okay. We can't shut that debate because they are in touch with the ground. I am not.
Right.
But the net effect is we must then amend the Constitution to move from a process that insulates a commission from political interference to one that inoculates politics into the commission.
All right.
So do we inoculate or do we insulate? If we decide to inoculate, then NADCO means nothing, because inoculation will first start with broad consensus beyond NADCO that will end up with amending Article 88. I dare say the risk of inoculating IBC with politics is far much greater than the problems of insulation. We would rather insist on an insulated commission, and then we'd rather debate on building trust, because trust, Sam, trust cannot be litigated, trust cannot be legislated.
All right.
We can only hope and pray that Kenyans are good and decent people who know how to respect people's jobs, and those people who are doing those jobs, they also know they bear responsibility towards Kenyans.
All right. I want us to transition to what then we need to do for the 2027 election. But before doing that, we reflect on the feedback we've received from Kenyans at Citizen TV Kenya. Some Gituku, they start to use the Citizen Daybreak. But Michael, you're saying that be it Chebukati or any other IBC commissioner or chairperson, the fact is that if you are placed in these positions, make sure you be honest to yourself, do justice to the people of Kenya, because today you're here, tomorrow you are not. May he rest in peace. Gabi Wakasiaka, a distinguished lawyer, former IBC chairman, and a key figure in Kenya's electoral history. His service, leadership, and dedication will always be remembered. Rest in peace. Who else is writing to us this morning? Wafula Chebukati may have faced harsh criticism, but he remained resolute in ensuring a transparent electoral process. His legacy will continue to inspire future leaders. That is Talai Kilel. That's what you're saying. And again, Gabi Wakasiaka, you say that our community has lost a shining light with the passing of the IBC chair, Wafula Chebukati. May his legacy inspire us to make the world a better place. My sincerest condolences to the family of Mr. Chebukati. And so much more. You continue to write to us at Citizen TV Kenya, at Sam Gituku. The hashtag to use is Citizen Daybreak. Now, in just about 2.5 years, we'll have an election in this country. Is it 9th or 10th of August 2027? We will check. It is the second Tuesday of August 2027. And there's something that Wakili